Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I'm here with my guest host, Marc Blount, and we've got two special guests in the studio that we will introduce shortly. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. If you want to follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie, there you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our community and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have two very special guests in studio. Well, actually, we're on location right now at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Center in the auxiliary room, and a room that both of these gentlemen have played such a large role in over the years and their families. I'm joined by Mr. Fred Rush. Fred, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
And a current board member and past president of the Martin Luther King Center, Mr. Johnny Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcus.
All right, and so if you've been following the news, you heard that the addition of Negro Leagues player statistics to the Major League Baseball's record books is making the news now. It says that Negro League players were added to the record books this week after a multi-year project by Major League Baseball, who decided in 2020 to reclassify the Negro Leagues as a major league. This undertaking involved researching and sifting through documents and scorecards from the past. And so when I saw this on the news, these were the first two gentlemen I thought of because of their organic knowledge of this particular topic. There's a lot of people we can bring on the show, and I didn't want a bunch of opinions. I wanted people that research this, that live this, so that they can help put it in context, so that we and you, the listener, could actually learn something in terms of the breadth, the depth, and the scope of this decision. And so, Mr. Rush, I'll start with you. We had a Negro League baseball team here, and there's a connection for your family to that Negro League team. Talk a little bit about that, and we'll bring Mr. Johnson in because he's written extensively about this.
I grew up with it, that's all. And everybody down there from Jethro to Moon to all of them. And it was an afternoon for family. That's exactly what it was. Everybody went, the kids, mom, dad, and it was enjoyable, it was safe, it was fun, and you had different teams playing, some out of town, some locals, just having a good time.
Mm-hmm. Baseball played a huge role in our community back then. I mean, I think right now baseball is really suffering from American blacks anyways on a major league level of playing the game. Talk about the significance of baseball in not just this community but around the country back in those days.
I think baseball was a rallying point for a lot of families. That's where they went to. There was not a lot of TV. There was some radio, but after you got up and went to church, right? And before supper, you could go to a good game and meet other people who were just enjoying the game and having their families there.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson, this is one of many areas in terms of black history that you have written about, commented on. Put this decision in context. First of all, again, take us back a little bit about the significance of not just baseball, but Negro League baseball in particular for this area and abroad.
Okay, for those who don't know, we're looking at two things. We're looking at the Negro American League and American League. And also, we have, in my era, a Southern Black League. And they were the Atlanta Black Crackers, the Birmingham Black Baron. And once you understand that they were called black because they had played in the white stadium, so they couldn't take the name of the white team. They had to take the name of the black team. The Atlanta White Crackers or the Atlanta Crackers. Now we became the Atlanta Black Crackers. So I grew up as a baseball player. I played baseball in high school, played baseball in college. And we were highly familiar with Negro baseball. We had people in my hometown who had tried out for Kansas City Monarchs, New York Giants at that time. So we knew people in the neighborhood who had tried out for those teams. And it was very important to us as young boys. Everybody in my hometown played baseball. Every community had a baseball team. We competed against each other. And as you mentioned earlier, Marcus, now as we look at baseball, we look at the number of minorities, and I'm talking about black players now, I'm not talking about Latin players or whatever. The number of minority players, black players, is on the decrease. And I get asked many times, why does that happen? one thing I tell people is, number one, baseball has a farm league, okay? And if you're out of high school and you aren't great, it may take you 10 or 12 years to get through that farm league, okay? So now you're saying, hey, I'm 18, now I'm 28, woo, woo, woo. But with the other sports, baseball, basketball, and football, you go in, you get drafted from high school or whatever, and you can go in and you can be a crucial part of that. Another thing, too, is money, M-O-N-E-Y. When you look at the major sports, yeah, baseball players make money, but the money is made in football and basketball.
Mark, when you saw the decision come down, give us your thoughts. I know that you, like myself, were excited to bring these two in because, there's a lot of learning to be had at the foot of both of these gentlemen.
That's why I'm so quiet. I'm just taking notes, mental notes, and thoughts, and really appreciating this pass down of knowledge and this them sharing their experiences. My first thought was, I guess it's an acknowledging of this was the culture of baseball, and it was a legitimate culture of baseball. So if you look at all the Hall of Fames, I want to go to the Hall of Fames right now. If you look at the NBA, how they're incorporating other leagues that are out there into their Hall of Fame. They're incorporating ABA. There's some ABA nostalgia. They're incorporating women. So if you have a baseball Hall of Fame, we have to acknowledge what happened in those eras, with this being America's pastime. This was our first national sport. And so they're admitting that, one, there was a wrong, that we wasn't allowed to play at a certain time. I guess it was called the Gentleman's Agreement. Now, there was a gentleman, Fleetwood Moses. I guess he was considered the first professional black player. Toledo, I believe. And his name makes it, and somewhere in the hall, it'll reflect it. But then comes Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson, I feel, becomes our first touchable hero as far as the mass athlete, that when he crosses over, it was so significant. Versus, I don't think anything was like it, with the exception of maybe when Jack Johnson, and I definitely wasn't there, when Jack Johnson becomes the heavyweight champion of the world, which was one of the first race riots in this country. When Jack Johnson knocked him out, it was a response to that. And when Jackie did what he did, I think we all stood proud. I think it was a moment that we all could share, and those that was living at that time, those that experienced it, I think they'll never forget what they was doing. It was one of those type of moments.
I see you gentlemen shaking your head. You're going to interject anything you hear. You can feel it, interject.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Mark said. Mark said a gentleman's agreement. I want you to know that there was not only an agreement in professional sports, there was an agreement in collegiate sports.
Yes.
Okay? Because during that time in the Big Ten, there was a gentleman's agreement that said you couldn't recruit blacks, and if you had a black on your team, couldn't be but one. And if you travel, they could travel with you, but where would they stay? So this is something that has been going on ever since America has been America.
Yes.
And I go back to the current report that said that we are living in two different Americas, one white, one black. And that's the America that I was brought up in, Fred brought up in, maybe not so you guys, because, you came up through the latter part of the Civil Rights Movement. You probably never hit Jim Crow or faced Jim Crow or saw Jim Crow. But it's ironic that here we have 2024 and all the achievement that Americans, I'm not talking about black Americans, that all the achievement that Americans have done is put on one side or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're white or black or Hispanic, you can hit a white baseball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Rush, I want to take you back to the days of slavery, right? And them not allowing, punishable by law, punishable by death a lot of times, them not allowing slaves to read and so many different things they didn't allow slaves to do. The prevailing thought is there was a fear over the ability, the God-given abilities of these slaves. For as much as you publicly try to deride them as being imbeciles and less than, there was a fear of their ability. Enter sports like baseball and other sports, boxing, what have you. in your opinion, has a lot of this been rooted over the years in the fear of the athletic prowess of these athletes? Because now it's about money, but back then, do you think that had something to do with the fact that, you know what, I don't want them taking over our game?
Well, I think the process of white male fragility is not only in athletics, it's in business, it's in education, it's in everything that's about America. When you look at it realistically, white males make up 12 to 13% of the population. Even their female counterparts, they're afraid of them. And they're afraid of the yellow, the black, the brown, and everybody else. So when you bring people in and you're automatically afraid of them, and basically people who have less work harder to achieve. All right? And that's your competition. They see it.
You know, let me also add too, when I did my thesis on the Negro in American sports, there was some research that I did. Number one is that baseball, basketball, and football were the least expensive sports
To do.
for impoverished people to participate in. It wasn't golf, it wasn't tennis, it wasn't these. So if you don't have any money, you gravitate to those things that you can afford. So we could afford a basketball or a baseball or whatever. We could do that. Now, the other part of what you're talking about is the dominance of black athletes. So during Jim Crow, the early 50s and 60s, anthropologists did research because they wanted to know why black people ran so fast.
Interesting.
And they came up with something they call fast twitch muscle. Okay. So they decided that black people had more fast twitch muscles than white people had, so they could run faster. Okay. So in about 1965 or 70, Sports Illustrated came out with an issue, I think I have it at home, where they explained all this. And one of the track coaches at Texas, El Paso, I think, made observation that blacks could run fast because their bust was higher and their muscle mass wasn't as dense. So they came with a conclusion that black could run fast and jump, but they couldn't swim because they didn't have the bones just to float. So when you take all that into perspective, what you see again, and I'm gonna say it loud, is white supremacy. And I don't know why people want to run from it or deny that it exists. It exists in 1619. It exists in 2024.
So Mark alluded to it. So then why now? Why now are we adding these Negro League players to the history books?
I think it's a remarketing, almost a diversity, equity, and inclusion moment where we acknowledge this to bring fans back or interest back to people that they felt they've lost and a crowd. Baseball now is not number one as it was then.
This is true.
NFL is number one in this country, soccer across the world, but NFL. So when you see that, and the kids today don't want to play, it doesn't appear that they want to play baseball. Or in the urban areas, baseball is just not. I don't even know. When I first moved here, I heard of Little League signups. It was advertised all the time. I don't hear of Little League. They went the way of the Boy Scouts or the Cub Scouts. It's gone. Now, Mr. Johnson had mentioned about money. Now, if you think about this, the money is in baseball. How? I don't know. The biggest contracts in American sports are in baseball. Guaranteed money. The NFL money's not guaranteed, no matter what you, except for my man Deshaun. It's not really guaranteed. Baseball, that's guaranteed money. And then also we would have to address baseball or sports was so cut and dry where you couldn't keep your stereotypes alive. It's either you perform or you don't. And the rules are right here. And if I could beat you with these rules, i.e., let's say Jesse Owens, we could say it was about running, but Hitler was right there. That was a big moment in American history where Jesse goes over there. He beats him in Berlin. America celebrates, and then the quote was, well, Hitler didn't shake your hand. He said the president didn't either. So that contrast. And then Who did he do this with? He did it against the Germans. The Germans at the time, the superiority, this supremacy idea. Because I believe it is our emergence that causes the rush to steroids in sports. They had to deal with us. It had to be. I don't think the brother in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, or whoever came up through the great mind, we did it off cornbread or genetics. But the Steelers and the Raiders in the 70s, the emergence of the black player, I believe, caused that element, the steroid element. How do we deal with this? How do we keep up with this competition? And it's already been proven in court. The Steelers was, and I was a Steeler fan then at that time when we seen John Cole, Mike Webster, and all these guys. The issue was, here comes Mean Joe Green. And they said that was a moment when Mean Joe Green came in. They said one of the first things he did was challenge Dick Butkus. And it was nothing Butkus could do. He said he smacked him, the legend goes. And they said, whoa. So when everybody came in, it was a challenge there. So how do we deal with this? And I think steroids was one of the impact was so deep that steroids was one of the challenges.
And the other thing is that athletics is a competition. Okay, it's a competition. Run faster, jump higher, those type of things. So if you're not getting that done through your own physicality, okay, and I'm gonna just say this. Hey, we could run fast because we had to run from the sheriff. We could run fast because we had to run from the dogs. We could run fast because we couldn't run it and couldn't go to one neighborhood. We got ran out of it. So yes, running faster was a mechanism of staying alive for us.
Good.
During my time. Okay. So what happens now is that you have what I consider who's going to be what. Okay. When I grew up, did I have some white baseball heroes? Yes, I did. I had Mickey Mantle. I had Whitey Ford. Y'all don't know these guys, okay? Love the Dodgers, hate the Yankees, but I like Elston Howard, if you understand what I'm saying. So we had all these things to pick and choose from. So when I grew up, Jackie Robinson was great, but the greatest ball player during our era was Willie Mays. When I grew up, it was Willie Mays. We love Ernie Banks, but we love Willie Mays more. Okay, Jackie stepped in and did Jackie thing. He was able to bring a whole bunch of people along with him. And what has happened is that young black kids, to me, have lost the motivation to play baseball because there's so many other things they could do. See, when I grew up, it wasn't no rugby. Wasn't no soccer, wasn't any pickleball and milkball or this stuff. You did 1, 2, or 3 things, and that was it. Now, as I want to say this right, now as integration has come in, then it's opened different avenues for us sports-wise. Okay, so now we are into tennis, we're into golf, everything. And here again too. People ask, well, how did they succeed? Because they never done that before. Number 2, because our innate ability. And the other one is because we have to always try harder and be better.
Right. There's definitely something to that. I know when I lived in Atlanta, I had the privilege of meeting Hank Aaron and getting to know his family intimately. I was involved with his brother-in-law in politics, Congressman David Scott. And, my family got to know theirs a great deal. I remember one time we were all at a hotel, and I was telling him about our ties to Sam Jethro. And he knew all of Sam's stats. He just went on and on and on. And it was interesting because people were walking up to him all night, and how you doing, Mr. Aaron? And, he really didn't like talking baseball, his brother-in-law was saying, because he gets it so often. But when we mentioned Sam Jethro, he lit up, and he just started running off stats. And so saying all that to say, when it comes to something like this is groundbreaking. Erie has very intimate ties, though. Talk about those ties to Erie, specific players. Mark, you mentioned an interesting thing that you read online the other day. Talk about some of those stats and some of those people, and help the listener understand how deep the roots run even here in Erie.
Well, one of the things, I played baseball, interested in baseball, met Chico Renfro, who was a standout in the Negro League. And when I first got to Erie, and I had kept up with the Cleveland Buckeyes, knew a little about Ernie Wright, and knew about Willie Grace, knew about George Jefferson, all these guys. And I got here and said, these guys in Erie, I heard about these guys, Sam Jefferson, these guys in Erie. And, one of the things that I think that is important is that when we look at this, even though black players could not play in the National Baseball League, and I want people to understand this, Mexico and Cuba opened up avenues for black players to leave America where they could not play and come and play on teams in Cuba and Mexico. And I want people to be aware of that.
Did not know that. Did not know that. Did not know. Mr. Russ, speak on that a little bit.
Well, immigration is obviously one of the things that people emulate America in a lot of ways. I mean, if you look at what's happening now in America with golf, it was a British sport. We've taken it over. We've improved it. We got better. And Tiger Woods became the envy of the world, just because he could do that better than most people. But I think imitation and so forth is one of the things that happens. And sports is one of the things that we ascribe to promote ourselves as being better. A lot of it's not education, it's sports. Talk to these young men, they only know 6 letters, NBA, NFL. And not BA or masters, that's it.
But, let me say this. One of the greatest influence on us today is media.
Yep.
Media, okay? TikTok, flip-flop, Instagram, and so on and so ever. But here's the thing. I tell people this. How many programs do you see highlighting black lawyers, black doctors, black engineers, black architects? You don't, okay? You see media highlighting black athletes, black entertainers, so on and so forth. So if I'm a young black kid and, I go to the daycare centers and everything, the first thing you ask the young black kid, whether they're 5, 6 years old, what you want to be. They say a basketball player, a football player. They don't say a doctor. They don't say a lawyer, because this is what has been pushed on them, okay? And one of the things, that I tell young kids, see, life's about competition. And nobody wants you competing against them. So if their kids are doctors and lawyers, they don't want you being doctors and lawyers. They want you being over here, because now you are not competing with them. So why do we have a lower number of black doctors? Think about that. Just think about that. Why are there so few black doctors when during the 1950s and 60s, when we had black towns and we had black schools, we had black doctors in every town,
In Erie.
So one of the things to me that has happened is that we have fallen away from what's important. When I grew up, the most important thing was getting an education. Now the most important thing is making money. Okay? And you and I both know you can make money without getting an education. So that's one of the reasons that we aren't able to compete. We're able to compete on the athletic fields, but we're not competing in academic areas.
Mm-hmm. I want to read this, and this is just one stat out of several. I want to read the batting average leaders, the old list and the new list, just as an example of how much this adjustment is affecting the record book. So you had the career batting average leaders. I won't give the actual numbers because it'll make it take longer. It was Ty Cobb, Rogers Hornsby, Ed Delahanty, Tristram Speaker, Ted Williams, Billy Hamilton, Dan Brothers, Babe Ruth, Harry Hellman, and Willie Keeler. That was the old list. Top 10 batting average leaders. Enter the new list. Number 1 now is Josh Gibson, Negro League. Then Ty Cobb, then Oscar Charleston, Negro League. Then Rogers Hornsby, then Judd Wilson, Negro League. Turkey Stearns, Negro League. Then Ed Delahanty. Then Buck Leonard, Negro League. Then Tristram Speaker and Ted Williams. What do you think the natural fallout is going to be with these reconfigured record books? We know how we feel on this side, but we've seen in several areas, the the hissy fit, if you will, or the temper tantrum of white America. What do you think, Mark? I see you about to fire off down there. What do you think the fallout is going to be?
I think those that, like in Florida, that are against anti-quote woke will be outraged about it. DeSantis will look at it as another equity plot or whatever. But those that really know baseball, to be honest with you, I don't think it's as big as a deal as not impact. I think it's a huge deal as far as these men being acknowledged in their game and the talent that they played against. However, I don't think baseball is followed as much, and the story is not as huge as it would have been maybe in the 70s or earlier. I just think it's going to be a real hardcore anti-woke person. It would outrage them, but it's not really, to me, it's not really going to get the due that it's deserved either or. Because baseball is just not that sport anymore.
Which is one of the reasons you said that going this route in the first place.
Well, there's a lot of things that are undercover. See, a lot of people don't realize, as you research and you read things, American Negro League players barnstormed in Mexico and Cuba against white baseball teams. I'm talking about Dizzy Dean. I'm talking about all these guys that white people know. If you ever read anything that Dizzy Dean, Paul Dean, anybody in the area said, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and these guys were better than anybody that we had in our league, and they didn't see why they shouldn't be playing there. But it's kind of like today. You know how we remain silent? See, America today is silent. We don't say things that we should say to make America better. We just sit back and relax, okay? Now, if Dizzy Dean and those guys said that in the early 1940s, before Jackie Robinson, then if they said, we need to have some black players in this league because they are as good or as better than we are. But nobody said that. So today we live in a silent America.
Right.
We see what's going on and everybody just want to be quiet. As long as it doesn't affect me and I'm not hurt by it, big deal.
I'm good.
You could take a sport. Let's show you how things can change in perception. One of the greatest cyclists in American history was a black guy. He was the first superstar in sports.
Jockey too.
There you go. One of the first. If you go to the history of the Kentucky Derby, the jockeys were black. Now you can't even. I haven't seen a black jockey. Things like the. I guess money came in.
Kind of where that image of the lawn jockey came from in the first place.
There you go. It's almost like the image, I guess, if you would say a cowboy. If you say a cowboy, the way if you watch Yellowstone, the odd dude is the black dude. Why is he in this cowboy thing? The reality of it is, there was many of us that were cowboys, and probably was the original ones because no one wanted to do the work. So when you look at these type of things, I just see it as okay. They did it. I'm glad they did it, but I don't think that it's a big story like people would say. How dare you do it to Ty Cobb? Because it's just not that. Ty Cobb is not that relevant now.
Yeah, who knows Ty Cobb?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Who knows he was born in Ralston, Georgia? Who knows that?
I wanted to acknowledge one thing, even though it's dealing with sports. Bill Walton just passed away, and I was thinking about this. He was 71. Bill Walton, and I'm going to acknowledge this, and I'm going to show you my growth, was probably the first white guy that I didn't like because he was white in a sport. And I acknowledged this at the time because he beat Doc. He beat Dr. J and the Dream Team. And I was hurt as a child, and I was like, oh, this white guy beat my hero or what have you. And Bill Russell was that guy. Then as I got older and I started reading about, Bill Walton, as I got older and read about him.
His activism,
I said, whoa, I was wrong. So I wanted to acknowledge how sometimes you could think one way and things like change once you get, as Mr. Johnson has said, the research. You don't really know these people. You don't really know the why of these things that happen like this. Because unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us even know Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige. Jethro used to tell me when he used to come to my store, we would talk baseball. He said, Mark, I said, Jethro, how did it feel to be the rookie of the year at 40? He's the oldest rookie of the year. And he said, Mark, we all made it when we. So say, if you look at it, everyone they let in for a while was rookie of the year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the story till I got it from the source itself. And think about this. This is what legitimizes what just happened. Jethro did it at 40, 39 and 40. Look at Satchel Paige pitching for the Cleveland Indians. And this is what was being held back, this type of talent. And they all say to a man that Jackie, it wasn't that he wasn't a great athlete. He was a great athlete.
He had the best
but he wasn't the best baseball player. He was the best temperament. And they was like all saying, well, why him or what have you in that aspect. But all I wanted to say is that I'm glad, I guess, baseball has acknowledged this. It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
And this is not equity in the sense of affirmative action. This is justice.
To give people that just do.
That's right.
Yeah. Mr. Rush, let me get you back in this conversation. We don't want to lose you now.
I'm listening.
We don't want to lose you now. You talk about the potential fallout from your perspective. How do you think America is going to react to these to the readjustments to the record books here?
I think one of the things about America is we are flexible. And our basic motive has always been the same thing.
Money.
Absolutely. Economics. Get more people in the seats, in the gate, whatever they got to do. They can do magazines, books, the whole bit. The economic base of America is still, and sports, lends into that.
Yeah.
The uniforms, you go up to the mall, go through Dick's, them $200 sneakers, somebody's buying them.
Mm-hmm.
All right? No.
Or these jerseys that you mentioned before we even came on the show, you brought up not a comparison, but you also, when it comes to sports capitalism, you brought up the WNBA. We just talked about this.
They coming.
But, here again, I'm going to kind of go away from Fred.
Do your thing, Mr. Johnson.
America's not flexible. Okay? And America not flexible because America wants you to fit in. Okay? Jackie Robinson fit in. Okay? And I'm not taking anything away from Jackie. He had to fit in for others to come in.
Yeah.
I want you to get it. He had to fit in so others could come in. So we live in America where you have to fit in.
Yeah.
That's a problem with integration now. Not integration, immigration.
Yeah.
See, these people coming over, we're saying they don't fit in.
Yeah.
They don't. Americans have this idea that whatever they do is the top of the ladder.
Always.
And what somebody else does means nothing.
Right.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Johnson. Go back to Mark's point when Mark was talking about the activism of Bill Walton, and that kind of humbled him in terms of how he viewed Bill Walton. So Jackie Robinson fit in because of his temperament. At the same time, don't you feel they downplayed his activism too much? I mean, Jackie Robinson is, better than most. Give us your thoughts on that.
Okay. The media might have downplayed his activism. Black newspapers
That we don't have anymore.
that did not downplay
That we don't have anymore.
They did not downplay the exploits
the Pittsburgh
of
Courier
Jackie
and all that.
Robinson. If you could go back to any old Pittsburgh Courier, the Atlanta Daily World, or those black newspapers, you can see whole articles just about what Jackie did that day. So the point is that because we were a split society, okay, white people didn't know about something because it wasn't important to them. It never made their paper, okay? Whereas to us, Jackie was the greatest thing going.
Right.
Because we saw his picture, we read about him every day. And, let me just throw this out, too.
All right.
For people who are not as old as being Fred, okay? As black kids, we could pick up an Ebony. We could pick up a Jet.
Gone.
And we could read about any black American that was doing something about something to something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't even pick up a black-based magazine unless it's hip-hop or hairdos where people can learn about what history is all about.
Right. Right. And you're tying in a lot of things that I know that you've spoken about in the past. And, when it comes to the history of African Americans in this country, these black newspapers, the rise of the Pullman Porters that you've spoken about at great length before, they were instrumental in bringing and transporting a lot of these newspapers to different cities and things along those lines. And it's just interesting how when African Americans, when black folks really took it upon themselves to say, I want to do this for ourselves, regardless of whether or not other people gave them credit, other folk come back around sooner or later because of money, right?
It's still an economic-based power.
Well, I call it capitalism.
Okay. I wouldn't argue that phrase.
And what it is, those who have keep having, those who don't have nothing. Okay? And when you look at it, you can look at America from the time of Franklin D. Roosevelt up until now. Roosevelt tried to give people an equal part of what America was about. You didn't have bread, we'll give you bread. You didn't have a job, we'll give you a job. So what he tried to do, he tried to make America for all. Okay, now you have people coming in, and the first thing they say, America for us. It's not for y'all.
Yeah.
It's for us. So what we're going to do, we're going to protect us.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the first law of nature? Self-preservation. Okay? So when you look at what's going on, and if you just think about it, so it was said that by the year, 2020 or whatever, the white population would be less than the other population, right? So what do we do with immigration? You can't come in, you're from Cuba, you're from over there, you can't come in. But I can tell you, if you're from India and Pakistan and you know some IT,
right,
or so on and so forth, we'll give you a work visa. So we'll bring you in. And I'm gonna go back to this because I never will forget this. When all the trouble first started in Haiti, and Haitians started to come here, okay? The first thing they said was send them back because they got AIDS. That's the first thing they said, okay? So what happened is that, what I tell people is, what's going on in Haiti right now is at America's front door. Why? Because we gave money to Papa Doc and Daddy Doc, millions of dollars, who didn't care anything about the Haitian people. When there was a revolution, they took their money, they went to France, they lived in their castles and so on and so forth. And we did not come in as America to help and aid these people.
We go with the winners all the time.
We send aid everywhere else, okay? But we don't aid those who need to be aided.
I would always say that I believe Haiti is used to symbolize. Haiti was the first black nation,
Independent black nation, yes.
to strike back and be the
successfully
power. And I believe there's a little payback ever since.
They've been taxing them ever
We'll
since.
never let this happen again. But I want to go back to also something that Mr. Johnson has said. Now, when we say this is the duality of being a United States citizen and being black. When we say good things about FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, he didn't integrate the troops. When he said he tried to do all for everybody, no, the American black man, soldier, veteran, he couldn't sit. His cart was different. His car was different than a German prisoner. That was under his rule. So it's hard. It's that duality. It's that we got to conceive, that we have to and we take the little good that they do, and we have to be thankful, I guess. And it's progress. We have to take progress because this thing is so interesting because I love sitting. I always love talking to Mr. Johnson and hearing Fred West talk because it makes you think. But it was said about Jim Crow how the young people didn't experience or what have you. And I want to say this real quick. They still experience the residue of it. It's not that it's gone. It's done a different way. So we have to understand that. Don't look at the youth like that, but reveal it, because Baldwin said it best. He said the tragedy is not the banks. The tragedy is not the the schools. The tragedy is not the cab driver, the landlord. The tragedy is that my grandsons still have to face the same thing that my grandfather had to face in a different way.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, you know,
That dehumanizing experience
right.
of being something, as Mr. Johnson would say, different.
Yeah, yeah, that's the word, the dehumanizing experience, and obviously less experience in these two. But I remember, I've said before on the show, I had the privilege. One of the positives of my mother having children at such a young age, my brother at 17, me at 19, is me getting a chance to sit at the feet of my great grandparents for years, Kane and Gertrude Arrington in Mississippi, and hearing the firsthand narratives of our family rather than having the stories passed down to us, and the stories of being dehumanized as a man in the presence of his family. His countenance always changed when he would tell those stories. And if you're listening, especially with black men, if you wonder why being disrespected is such anathema now with black men, you've had these stories handed down from these men that were dehumanized, oftentimes in front of their families, and many times, if not all the time, couldn't do very much of anything about it. And now I wish you would disrespect me. I get my say without getting lynched for it.
Montgomery. I think Montgomery was an example of that. If that had been Montgomery in maybe 50 years ago or 60 or 70 years ago, a brother wouldn't have jumped off a ship and responded the way that he responded. But it's today. But that's just progress, because although we have our moments where we can hit somebody with a chair or whatever, the fact that our students are going to inferior schools, being taught inferior things, being placed in statistically disadvantaged ways and don't even know it, and that we accept this is acceptable. It's acceptable here that in the ninth grade class here, 50% will drop out.
Yeah. And you may be asking yourselves, what does all of this have to do with the Negro League? The fact that the Negro League was necessary, the fact that the records weren't integrated in the first place was all born from these things. They are all inextricably bound. And so I know a lot of our white brothers says, oh my God, it always comes back to that, because it's all the same story. Different chapters, same story.
One of the things too is that, we hear this a lot. Why are you playing the race card? Okay? Well, you played the race card in 1619. You put your race over mine. So you played the race card.
Right.
Okay? So today, when I talk to people, they say, you're playing the race card. I said, no. I said, we just try to throw the jokers out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not playing the race card. I just want to throw all the jokers out so we'll have the right deck.
Hey, I remember asking my father when I was young, the phrase, and we know why and how, but the phrase "little white lie" has always, tickled me, because the older I got, I'm like, I'm superior to you. That's a big lie, right? This is my land and I have a right to kill you and exterminate you. That's a big lie. We discovered this place. I'm like, the biggest lies wasn't told by us, and yet the phrase was coined, a little white lie. But back to this baseball thing as we go to the finish line. At the end of it all, Mark, let's go to the popularity of the game.
I think it went down because, again, the money, the participation that it takes to play baseball. Basketball, I could go out and I could shoot a basketball by myself, and I could play this. It doesn't take as many people to do. Football, the opportunities became more in football, and you're already living in football as the culture grew to football. So the opportunities to be in other things destroy baseball. However, I think what we also have to look at is that this Negro League story is a story of us. We could have been in the majors. We was just denied the opportunity, but we was just as good,
if not better.
There you go. But also, the story goes further into integration happens. A lot of people believe that Dr. King failed because we was fighting to be with them. And this is a very important thing right here. There's a difference between equity and equality and thinking that you're inferior to something. That ain't what Dr. King wasn't fighting for you to move to Mill Creek. What he was fighting for was you to be able to, if you wanted to.
If you want to.
Or your house or your school was the same. Because they said separate, people don't understand, separate but equal. It was never equal.
Never.
That was the argument. Well, in this case, when Jackie goes over, it kills the Negro League, as the story says, because now we're integrated. Like a lot of people say that's what kills Black Wall Street or whatever, integration. And I have to say, no, it wasn't opportunities that killed us. It was the mindsets. And until we attack this mindset and understand what collectives do and see ourselves as a collective, as each other, how we support one another or whatever. It wasn't integration. It was our mindset that did it or whatever. Because you could still have these leagues. We could have still kept those leagues.
Yeah.
There was no reason. It was just like our church. Our churches still stand. You could go to any white church you want to, or vice versa. But that system stayed. Our barbershops, they stayed. So we have to question it. It wasn't so much because of integration as far as what King did. And I had to get that out the way because I hear people say that all the time, where King fought for integration and Charleston White said that, and that's what he fought for. No, he didn't grow up in that time. And to say that is insulting to someone like Dr. King and to someone that lived at that time or whatever. That's not the appropriate thing.
And Mr. Rush, what's, in your opinion, what's the next chapter? And so this happened. It's being celebrated, and rightfully so, because it is progress, right? It's giving people their just due. It is not, reparations per se, or diversity, or DEI, and equity. No, it's giving them their just due. They earned it. What do you think the fallout is going to be on baseball? How do you think this is going to impact the future of baseball? And how do you think, if at all, this will impact the future of, as loaded as this term is, race relations in America?
I think it comes back to the basics when we sit down and decide what we're going to do collectively, irregardless of the circumstances.
Excellent point.
All right? We have to say, we're going to clean up our schools. We're going to clean up our neighborhoods. We're going to work, put actually elbow grease in and invest in and the whole bit. And we're going to walk out there and talk to these folks. Because these kids they see us more than we see them. All right? That's what we have to do. And I guess I grew up in a time when we did have that kind of leadership. We had the churches, the communities, the organizations, the Masons, the Elks, and now we got Alphas, Kappas, Qs, all kind of things. But are they even communicating with each other for the good of the group? No. A lot of times they just want to get a grant and get a program started.
Yeah.
What's the thread that's tying us together?
Yeah.
Is it sports? Is it whatever the case may be? Because we have to be, like you said, maybe not united, but at least in a certain mindset to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Johnson, take us home. What do you think the fallout of all of this is going to be, and what does the future hold?
Well, I think the fallout is going to be, number one, all depending on where these people are historically. Okay, if you're still 1950 South, you hate this. Okay, how are you going? Same way when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record. All these letters, what these so and so, blah blah blah. So you have the mindset of those people. No matter what, they're going to be against it, and so on and so forth.
The school board in Kentucky that just voted to get the Confederate names back on it. Exactly.
But it's great to me for our young kids to know that even during that era, there were black people who were excelling, going over and above. And now that recognition is there. It's there. And, I want to say this too, baseball is American sports. That's how it's done, right? So if it's American sports, why is it more international now? We are getting more Japanese baseball players than we're getting black baseball players. And if we go to basketball, we're getting now more foreign players than American-born white players. So, it's a microcosm. Well, it's a lie. It's not a microcosm. Where we have this thing where we say that we are a melting pot or so on and so forth, where the melting pot doesn't have a bottom. Everybody falls through. And nobody get caught. Okay, and if you, this is how I see America. we are the biggest liars in the world. And I may get some phone calls tonight or some comment on Facebook. I really don't care. We're the biggest liars in the world. And when you live a lie long enough, you never see the truth. And America doesn't see the truth. And I hear people say, well, for us who know the truth, Trump going to show other folk what the truth really is. Because they really don't want to face the truth.
Yeah.
So we're at a point in America now. Let's just throw sports to the side. We're at a point in America now where we're going to decide in 2024 what America is going to be. And if we make the wrong choice, if we go down the wrong road, it may be a train that came back up.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we appreciate the wisdom of our guest today. I appreciate Marc Blount guest hosting for me as usual. And Marc always brings a lot of perspective to the show, and that's a good thing. We also appreciate our esteemed guests, Mr. Fred Rush, Mr. Johnny Johnson, all of your historic perspective. And if you don't know, these are two gentlemen that many people in this community, black, white, or other, go to for historic perspective when it comes to the plight of African-American people in this country and in this city. And so we thank them for sharing that with us today. And so that's it for our show today. You can tune in next time.
Can we do one more thing?
One more thing from Marc Blount.
Can we dedicate this show? We kind of left the Negro League to Mr. Ernie Wright, to Big Pitch, to Willie Grace, to the ones that I didn't mention, for finally being recognized.
Amen.
And they made it home. They made it home.
Amen. So, that is, we are all remiss. That is a good way to end this show, Marc. Good way to end this show. And listen, somewhere out there, they're smiling down saying they finally gave us credit where credit was due.
There you go.
All right? And so tune in next time when you can hear more discussion and analysis around with local and national guests around local and national issues. I need you to remember the Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and on the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN PBS NPR, which is 91.3 FM. Also, if you want to call in, leave a comment, a message, or a suggestion, you can call the next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.